Greetings to our audience today. My name is Larry Pearson, Vice President and Client Partner at Impetus Technologies, and I'm pleased to be your host and MC for today's session, which is entitled Modern ETL on Cloud, Trends and Use Cases. For those of you who may not know us, the Impetus Group of companies are headquartered here in the United States in the heart of Silicon Valley. And we specialize on the mission to help large enterprises achieve their data technology and cloud transformation objectives. And the mission statement that you see here on the screen, commonly referred to as single source of truth, is drawn directly from that specialization. Before we get started, I have just a couple of housekeeping announcements. As attendees, you will all be on mute. You can, however, ask questions using the chat panel on your screen. We've got specific time set aside at the end of our webinar to address all of the questions that come in, either live on the air or in writing. And it's a way that we add an interactive dimension to the experience. It's very important. I would encourage you, as we're going along at any time, to enter those questions so we can address those at the end. To take a minute and look at our agenda. We've broken this down into a series of topics. First, some discussion about why ETL is being transformed to the cloud, some of the options and trends involved there, as well as some Fortune 500 user stories drawn directly from our experiences working with large clients. And lastly, an overview of a solution approach to accomplishing this important objective. Besides the Q&A session at the end, we generally have a poll or two that we also use as a way to, again, add that interactive dimension. And so you'll see the first poll popping up there on your screen now. And the question is, what is currently your top challenge in transforming ETL to the cloud? And there's 5 different options there. And if you'll be sure to respond here to that poll, we'll come back to you shortly here during the webinar and share the results with you. And again, always an interesting aspect of each of our webinars. Let me take a minute and introduce my colleagues. Michael Farnbach is a principal solution architect with over 20 years of experience in high-performance computing, distributed data architectures, and modern data and cloud platforms. Has extensive experience helping transform legacy business applications into the modern cloud or the modern data architecture on the cloud. So Michael, thank you for joining us today. Also with us is Barry Tuthill. Barry leads our field teams in their direct work with our clients and is himself a subject matter expert and frequent speaker on the topic of developing a business case for EDW and ETL transformation and the velocity that can be achieved by applying automation to all phases of a cloud migration. And Barry, thank you as well for being with us today. I'd like now, though, to hand things over to Michael Farnbach to get this kicked off. Michael, over to you.
Thank you very much, Larry. So, just to give you a little bit of background and perspective, when I'm working at Impetus, because of our expertise, because of our automation and capabilities, we are usually called on in the most extreme circumstances on things that are the most entrenched, that are going to the most cutting edge of cloud capabilities, and so. You know, that's what we've seen. We've seen the most difficult, and so when we can mirror what Gartner says, that databases are moving to the cloud, and when databases move to the cloud, the ETL will move to the cloud too. Sometimes people move because the databases compel them, or sometimes they move because the ETL compels them. There's going to be a repatriation after that, but it's going to be marginal. The cloud is room enough for everybody, and the story, the success story of the cloud, the capabilities that the cloud provides has been a 10-year-long story. So we're going to give some review. We're going to give some updates on that story in the next few slides. There's cloud value propositions. The two top ones are going to be that old story, the elasticity, the economics, proven time and time again, and has interested and captivated, compelled people to move to the cloud for over a decade now. But when we're talking about new cloud capabilities, the cloud is evolving. The cloud is someplace that new things are still happening and advancements are taking place. And your ability to take advantage of these depends on your ability to understand where the cloud's at, your ability to deal with the services, and the sustainability that gives you, the reduction in cognitive load, is going to be determined based on your ability to navigate, your acumen, your prowess, your ability to take advantage of these things. So some things come just because you're coming to the cloud, and then the bottom ones are the ones that are the bonuses. When the better you are at it, the more benefits you're going to be able to see from that. How do you know from the inside when you're moving something to the cloud if you're doing a good job? You know, before you get the ROI at the end, before you go through your stage 5 from the project management office, how do you know at the beginning stages what to consider and how to know if you're doing a good job? That for us is measured by checking on how well you're freeing yourself from vendor lock-in. It's determined by the alignment, not just with the current business goals, but also with the future business goals. Is this migration to the cloud also come with a horizon beyond that enables more capacity and capability for your future goals, and the ability to leverage these capabilities in the most cloud-native ways means that you're dealing less and less with the headaches of the infrastructure in and of itself and dealing with just the services. And the services are your way of extracting the value directly with the least friction, with the least cognitive load. The more you're dealing with things as a service, the more you're dealing with services that meet your value profile, the better you're going to be in 6 months and in 6 years. So let's give a case, a bit of a understanding of this. One of the benefits of the cloud is that the cloud was built on collaboration, and it continues to be built on collaboration. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Microsoft was setting the standards, Oracle was setting the standards, IBM was setting the standards, and these standards in and of themselves were good, but they were also pretty biased towards particular companies. In the cloud today, we have collaborative standards that are coming out. Kubernetes, the way Python in and of itself, or the APIs that the programs use to talk with each other. Everything about the cloud comes from a more collaborative model. Because that's more collaborative, that means more pieces fit together more naturally. Your ETL processes can now incorporate things that 5 years ago were unheard of. You can, the data science, the data analytics can help you with your data cleansing, as well as the predictive analysis and marketing analysis that we traditionally use. They can be applied directly to ETL-specific activities and help expand your ETL activities. Very different worlds, but because everything is coming together with this open collaboration, it fits in. So your barrier isn't, and this is also where likely your barrier of entry into the cloud is coming from. When would we see the most entrenched applications and ETLs and data marts? They're entrenched because they're still in the most deep of the 15, 20-year back proprietary standards. So migration is going to depend on being able to take what was a standard 15 years ago and transform it into the standards of today. One of the success stories of being able to take old standards and move it into new. And from that perspective, right, Microsoft used to set standards. Now it's in the cloud, and its cloud offering can speak with its old standards, SSIS, and things like that. But if you look at each of these components, Data Factory and Cosmo and Azure Data Warehouse and Blob Storage, those are all built on standards that are more easily integrated with. You can write Python against these better. Just to give it an example, Python against them, you can integrate, and with that comes the ability to integrate some of the most current data modeling and data analytics. So being able to move your ETL, being able to move ETL to the cloud, Microsoft's a great example of even some things that are the most entrenched. When they get moved into the cloud, all of a sudden see a lot more possibility and a lot more capability. And the other thing that's a consideration on the cloud for architecture is when we talk about a data warehouse on a cloud, I want to just pause and note for just a second just how broad of a term that can mean. We have data warehouses that are specific, like Snowflake. But again, this is all about what happens when something enters into the cloud. And today, if you look at S3, which is basically a file system in the cloud, it's an object storage. It's where you store the files and very large logical objects that you put into a cloud. Even that has data warehouse capabilities in it. It's not too well kept a secret. There's plenty of people who know about this, but just to point out, how much things look like data warehouses. S3 itself has a SQL interface. You can run SQL-like queries on top of your S3 files directly through the S3 HTTP REST interface. That makes it act a lot like a data warehouse. We have data warehouses that are not just Snowflake, but we've got strong key value pair databases like Couchbase and Aerospike that are expandable and capable, just like data warehouses have interfaces that you can run queries just like data warehouses. And what this means is that what kind of data you have and the context of your data, how you're going to read the data is going to be more important to you in choosing which data platform it is. But because it's on the cloud, you're guaranteed the scalability, the cost savings, and the collaborative interfaces, the well-documented APIs to be able to interact with it and integrate it into your flows as well. And because of all these options, because everything, it tends to be like a data warehouse out there. Those are your opportunities for your ingenuity and your prowess to be able to put a strategic advantage in your own pipelines and such. So that's again, we're noting the ability to take advantage of these capabilities. So as I'm tiptoeing up to this point, what's the most future-defining trend? I would say it is the open collaboration. The way that open collaboration is defining what cloud native is. The way that open collaboration increases the capability and capacity and the landscape of what you get to choose from, and have them integrated means that in some ways our job is a lot more challenging than it was 5 to 10 years ago. So I'd like to turn it over to Barry to help underline this with some Fortune 500 use cases.
Just going to go over a couple case studies just as far as customers that we've worked with and kind of help them on their journey to bring their ETL to the cloud. In both of these case studies here on the screen really align with that last model that Michael had mentioned around open collaboration and cloud native. The first here was a large U.S. bank. They were trying to move to AWS cloud. They had a very complex ETL environment leveraging Informatica. We started off by assessing their ETL workloads, first looking at the complexity of the environment, but then also categorizing that complexity, across the different types of workflows. We then looked at the different dependencies across these workflows and as well as across their whole ETL and data warehouse landscape to help determine what was the optimal approach to migration. From this assessment, we were able to create a migration blueprint and project plan, and then ultimately started the work to actually transform their Informatica workloads to PySpark in an automated way, ultimately moving that to AWS and integrating with the orchestration capabilities of AWS Glue. The second study here is a program where we worked with a large auto parts manufacturer. They were working on a large transformation from data stage, where we used our, again, automated assessment solution and transformation approach to help them also migrate to PySpark on Azure. And in this case, all of, again, the workloads were moved to Azure on PySpark, but integrated with Azure Data Factory for all of the orchestration. In both cases here, all of the kind of the end-to-end transformation was covered through Impetus. We also performed all of the performance tuning and optimization requirements. So, the client was ensuring they were meeting their business SLAs. Here's a kind of a more detailed view into that first case study of the U.S. bank. So I started out mentioning we start with an assessment phase where we look at the complexity and the dependencies of the Informatica workflows. This is done through the Impetus Workload Transformation Solution, which essentially creates actionable recommendations for creating that migration plan and roadmap. It also gives the client and Impetus a view into what are the types of optimization strategies and performance tuning strategies we need to implement for the next step, which is the transformation stage. In the transformation step, we use an intelligent transformation engine within the Impetus solution to auto-transform all of the legacy Informatica functions and components to equivalent PySpark jobs. So we're able to automate that process. We're also able to automate the whole validation process and reconciliation process, which helps streamline traditional kind of manual validation processes you would go through in a manual migration. It also really helps accelerate the whole UAT process and simplifies that UAT process so our clients can speed up the whole transformation project. And then finally, our team of experts help transition the client into production on the new cloud platform, in this case AWS, where we were able to integrate all the PySpark to AWS Glue, ensure we were meeting all the business SLAs. We're also doing a lot of, through this process, capturing very valuable lineage and metadata information that the client used in other parts of their architecture. And then also set up the whole DevOps environment as well for the client. So it is truly kind of an end-to-end process from start to finish where we're helping our customers. As far as the scale of complexity with this particular customer, we're talking about thousands of ETL scripts. In some of those scripts, there were over 10,000 lines of codes. In some of them, there were over 30,000 lines of code. So there was a lot of work there. It was a pretty extensive project. The scripts themselves contained a lot of complex expressions, things like running aggregates, link conditions, dynamic lookups, etc. The workflows themselves included sessions and mappings and transformations as well as queries. There was logic segregation for business processes, so for data ingestion from source to target, for reloading process data back to the BI layer, logic for data transformations, etc. And there was also parallelism, so that needed to be addressed across the sessions and mappings and transformations. And based on the identified dependencies, we had to really devise that parallel execution strategy in the target environment, which again was AWS. So there was a lot going on in this project. Value delivered. What you're seeing here on this slide here kind of goes through the impetus solution and methodology, which essentially delivers a reduced risk and a 50% reduction in overall effort just due to the level of automation that we deliver. What you see kind of in the core of this chart is, we look at, the steps, or we've quantified the steps of value across the different parts of our methodology. So when you go across each step from assess, transform, validate, and execute, for example, when looking at manual assessments, for example, a client would take anywhere from 5% of their time focused on that assessment process in that phase, whereas if you were to use the impetus solution and capability, we reduce that time down to 3%. The largest reduction really happening in the second step here, which is the transform step, where we're able to reduce traditionally a 40% level of effort if you were to do manual conversion to 8% through our level of automation. And then you can see the savings across the validate and execution steps, where you get a cumulative value of about a 50% overall effort reduction through leveraging the impetus tooling and ultimately methodology. One of the things that I just recommend for customers on this webinar who are kind of going into this planning process or thinking about cloud transformation, really take a look closely at each one of these steps, really dig into what you need to do to really do a comprehensive job of understanding what needs to happen across each one of these steps. I mean, these are very high level. There's a lot of intricate detail behind the scenes of each one of these steps. So really dig into it and understand what needs to happen, because I've heard some horror stories out there in the, talking to customers where, things like, they didn't assess the legacy environment enough or didn't spend enough time there. That caused challenges, or, corners were cut in the validation phase that ultimately impacted UAT and things like that. So it's important to really, when evaluating different partners to dig into each one of these. Just kind of highlighting and finishing here on the value delivered through, or what our customers see as far as the value of impetus. First of all, is accelerating the decommissioning of your legacy tools. So this will help eliminate those maintenance, license, any sort of future upgrade costs. 50% less effort, which often translates into much less cost for the effort itself. Matching business SLAs to ensure that there's no impact on the end user experience. From a vendor lock-in perspective, we look at it in two ways. One is that the impetus approach and the code that we provide you during this project is 100% owned by the client, and there's nothing that impetus is leaving behind that's kind of proprietary in nature. And, there's no kind of lock-in as far as what work we're doing. The second perspective, and kind of aligning with what Michael talked about, is as far as open collaboration, our design principles as far as what we deliver as an output and the code that we deliver is very much interoperable across multiple clouds. So the Spark code, for example, can be very easily be interoperable across different cloud vendors. And finally, we get our customers to the finish line. Cloud modernization, this isn't an easy project. We work with some of the biggest companies in the world, and we ultimately help them get to their end goal, which is a fully enabled cloud platform. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it back over to Larry, and he's going to give you the poll results.
Great, Barry. Thanks for that summary, and thank you to our audience for responding to the poll. You see the audience poll results listed here. The question, you'll recall, said, what are your current top challenges in transforming ETL to the cloud? And the number one area was data integration. Of course, that's a fundamental function of any ETL initiative, followed by maintaining data security, and then at 6%, each of business disruption and timelines, within a catch-all here of 13% or so who said there were other factors that represented their largest challenge. So thank you again for that. And I'd ask Michael to jump back in now to cover our next topic, where we'll take a closer look at some of the tooling which is designed to facilitate some of those benefits and advantages that Barry just covered in his summary. So Michael, if you jump back in.
All right, thank you very much. And I think it's interesting the poll mirrors a lot of what I've seen. The data integration, the options out there. When I look at the poll, I see that the data integration, data options is a daunting decision with all of the options that are out there. But along with options and freedom and collaboration comes the second part, right? The data security. Data security can be seen as sort of the byproduct of so many options, so many different things that are going on. One of these data integration points going to be the weak link in our security and such. So very, very interesting results. So we're going to go to a bit more depth into what does it take to really get this moving. I like to think of our tool like a 4x4, and you can think of a 4x4 and its capability to get over bumps, to get over problems. The tool is part of a methodology. That's what's driving us down these very bumpy roads where there may be some unforeseen challenges and such. So what we do, our strategy and our methodology and our tool in and of itself is designed to help us to get over problems, to give us the visibility to make the intelligent path choices, but also to give us the capability to make changes often, make changes correctly, and have an agile suspension, if you were, to be able to give us all the flexibility and freedom that we need to be able to get over issues that happen. One of the areas that this is one area, but I think it is the keenest area to show just what I mean by capability and how visibility and flexibility and all work together to give you options to be able to get over data integration challenges, data security challenges, or any of the other challenges that we've seen. So dependency graphs are something that we use to get visibility. We want to be able to see dependencies on multiple levels, from the highest level of what's going on in the top levels of orchestration and management, what's going on in the script level, and then maybe the queries that those scripts call, or the actual ETL code where the business or transformation logic exists. The workflow session and mapping at a transformation level is our way of getting that visibility. It's a comprehensive visibility. We go all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom. It's a DAG-based approach, so we can see how all of these dependencies interrelate and are able to make some key decisions based on that. So let's see some of the visibility that we get, and some of the decisions that we will make on this. So this is what it looks like in our tool. We'll be able to take your code as a logical block of workflow or a pipeline.
Yeah, what Michael was showing is the dependency type visualization that we can do by looking at the different types of ETL code, and helps us kind of plan out and map out a project plan related to to migrate thing and ultimately create logical units of migration. Oftentimes our clients don't have this type of visibility into their legacy environment for a variety of reasons. It's because typically these tools have been around for the last 15, 20 years, and there are redundant type workflows out there in the environment, and just being able to get this visibility into, okay, what does my legacy world look like, and what are the dependencies across this environment, so I can properly plan out a migration project is very valuable to customers. This view into the tool also, again, is like an ETL analysis, but what we're doing here is looking into the complexity of the workflows. And as you can see on the top right-hand corner, we look at different categories of complexity, things of like trivial to things that are very complex, right? And really understanding the amount of workflows or jobs that fall across these different complexity levels, again, gives us great visibility into what is going to be the level of effort and how we plan and approach the transformation project. The next here is looking at the capacity being taken up by the legacy environment. And in this case, what we're looking at is actually the EDW, but within the EDW, oftentimes there are ETL jobs and applications running within the data warehouse. So what we can do is analyze those applications, understand the amount of CPU, I/O, and execution time those programs are taking, and then we can identify the type of or the amount of capacity relief we can achieve within your on-premise infrastructure. And we can do this for a variety of reasons. One is it often can help us figure out what type of capacity applications might actually need in the cloud world, but it also gives us visibility into the kind of low-hanging fruit in the data warehouse world. So oftentimes we'll talk to customers that have they're coming up to capacity in their data warehouse environment, or they're coming up to some refresh and they want to try to take off some level of capacity, 10 or 20%, and we can understand through this view where the low-hanging fruit is within the data warehouse and ETL environment. Ultimately, the end result here, what are the business outcomes that you achieve through Impetus and how we can help? Very similar to some of the things we talked about earlier, but just to get to the end here, the assessment part of our solution and methodology allows us to do data-driven decisioning. One vice president that I was working with like about a year or so ago, a little over a year ago, one of the things that he liked about our methodology is, starting off at the assessment stage and being able to have that data-driven decision-making, but also that everything from that data is ultimately actionable, so we can immediately make decisions based on the assessment. No business disruption, so we'll keep your end users running business as usual, and we'll ensure that cutover for your for our customers is seamless. Proactive mitigation of risks. So this happens at all levels of the migration methodology and process, from starting off with the assessment and understanding things that maybe shouldn't be migrated or things that might need to be re-architected, to doing automated validation during the query conversion process. All of these things reduce human intervention and ultimately mitigate risks for our customers. Reuse of existing investments. I mean, at the end of the day, you've spent the past 15 years in this data warehouse world. You've built up a lot of organizational capability with these tools and all of this business logic. Oftentimes it doesn't make sense to just throw all that stuff away. So let's figure out how we can take advantage of that intelligence that you've built up over the last 15 years and reuse that in the cloud world. And finally, faster time to market, where we can help automate and accelerate and iterate in a much different way, leveraging automation and reducing the amount of manual human intervention involved. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Larry for conclusion, and thank you all for your time.
Great. Thank you, Barry, for jumping in on that. We do have a number of questions here. And Barry, I know you can see those as well. Let me just introduce some of these.
Yeah, Larry. So we support all of the common ETL tools out there in the marketplace. We've done projects with customers around Informatica, DataStage, Ab initio. Even in the SaaS world, there's a lot of ETL type work happening in SaaS where we've helped, transform. So we even have customers that we've worked with that have custom ETL. So one of the nice things about our tooling and the way we built our tooling is it can very rapidly be developed to support different types of legacy code patterns. So, in many cases, I would say, yeah, there are the common ETL tools in the market, but that doesn't restrict our ability to kind of come in and very rapidly, help our customers, convert different types of ETL, even custom ETL.
Barry, I know that we, during the webinar, quoted some examples of where we can most impact what might otherwise be a manual effort. Could you comment a little bit on what you're seeing, in fact, with customers in terms of the validity of some of those metrics and just to generalize some of those experiences?
Yeah, sure, Larry. So as far as, what we've seen with customers and how we can help impact a transformation code project through automation, it kind of varies, across the board. I think, automation is there to help accelerate, and oftentimes customers really like the fact that or kind of try to gravitate to cost reductions and really want to achieve cost reductions through automation. It's really more than that. It's really the value around risk mitigation and helping our customers be successful. But, across each one of the steps that we've outlined kind of in this webinar, I think we've helped our customers see significant levels of automation across each one of these steps. I think what in the transformation step that I talked about before, we've seen anywhere between a low end of 70% automation from a code conversion automation perspective to a high end of over 90% automation. It really depends on the different types of technologies that we're talking about, both not only from a source perspective, which I described, we're very flexible with the different types of sources that we support, but also from a target perspective. right? And there's multiple options that you can consider across, in your cloud environment when you move workloads over. In AWS, you have S3 EMR, you have Glue, you have Redshift and Google, you've got Dataproc and BigQuery, Azure, Databricks, Data Factory, Synapse. So it's really the kind of the combination of source and target patterns really drives the level of automation. But, at a low end, we're talking, 70%, again, high end over 90%.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, can I take a little bit on that as well?
Go ahead, Michael.
Sure. Welcome back.
No, thank you. I really apologize. I'm called in now, and this connection's working well. So we're definitely on a Gartner curve when it comes to automation for ETL processing. We, at Impetus, we've been on the curve for over a decade, using grammatical engines to be able to translate code from one thing into another, and we're a little bit further down the curve than most. And in the Gartner curve, you've got these early expectations of what automation is going to do for you, and then as sometimes those expectations get refined, the expectations, some of the expectations may be, may go through a learning curve and say these expectations really weren't it. So let me give a little bit of a little bit down the curve as far at least as we are, where we've learned what automation can do and what it can't, is that let's say that the automation for us lets one person do the work of 5 people, and that's generally a good thing. When we're between 3 and 5 people, it's one person do the work of 3 and 5 people. That doesn't necessarily mean that the automation is doing the work of 4 people. It really is enabling the capability of one person to do more work. So what does that translate to? So that translates to the ability to make changes later on in the process. If you have one person that's already gone through 1,000 SQL queries and transforming them from one engine to another, and then you realize, oh, I want to change how we're doing this. We can do this a lot easier. I really wish we could go back and make all of those changes to everything that we just did. We're running an automation tool. When we're doing that transformation, we're running an automation tool. We can tell the automation tool, let's go back and redo these to be able to do that. So your agility, your ability to iterate is increased. So you're not just doing the work of 5 people, but you have capabilities now that you just didn't have before, even if you did have 5 people working on it. So that's really where the mark of capability comes in, and where an automation tool helps you get over problems easier and better, and helps you see the problems in advance better, is in that it's enabling your capability to do these transformations equally. When the real measure of a translation, right, is how native it seems in the target language, the target platform, target country. How native does it seem when it gets there? The more native it is when it gets there, the easier it is to maintain, read, understand in the target platform. And when automation is just doing things for you, it's not going to produce intelligible results on the other end. It's going to give you something that's intelligible only to a computer, honestly. So that's why, as far down the curve as we are, we see it as not doing work for us, but enabling us to do more work and enabling us with capabilities we just didn't have before. And these capabilities mean that our timelines and our estimates of what it's going to take to transform the code is going to be more precise. It's going to be tested, it's going to be tuned in and of itself based on the tool. We're going to have something that we can bank on at the end when it comes to be an estimate. We're going to be able to facilitate all of these things that will make it more native onto the new environment, more maintainable on the new environment. And it is going to come at where all of this capability does mean that we get to do more for the resources that we put into it. I mean, you'll see that. But when you focus on the reduction of resources, it's almost like you're being penny wise and pound foolish. You're going to lose it on the other end. So that's where we're at in the curve, and I hope that answer helps.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Michael. I see we're just about we actually are out of time. Let me go ahead though and extend this a couple of minutes and take one more. We have a question here as to whether we've actually seen customers decommission some of these legacy tool sets and technologies, and how that may be accelerated through the Influence Workload Transformation Framework.
Yes, that is almost universally the goal is to, we're seeing the worst of the worst things that should have been decommissioned 10 years ago. Decommissioning is absolutely the goal and absolutely what we achieve with the customers. That's for us, it's actually not a pipe dream. It's what we actually achieve. So if that helps.
Yeah, great. That's excellent. Well, listen, we are out of time. We do have other questions here. As I stated earlier, we will answer all of these questions back to you in the form of an email. Before we close the webinar, though, we have a couple of other, there's a second poll here. If you would be interested in a deep dive of the product as shown in the webinar, you have the ability to respond to this poll, and we'll get back to you on that. That also, by the way, allows us to really tailor the whole deep dive specifically to your environment, be that differences in source or differences in target that you'd like to discuss. You may have, now that you've seen the webinar, you may have colleagues who were not able to attend today that you would like to share this with, and this webinar will be archived on our website for them, and we'd encourage you to take advantage of that. In addition, when you go to our website, you'll actually have access to a rich collection of other data sheets, case studies, white papers, links to blogs and podcasts, and so forth. So I do encourage you to all take advantage of that. There's also a feedback poll on the screen, and that feedback poll is very important to us. If you'd give us feedback on your user experience here today, and there is a space there for comments. We do read every one of those comments, take them very seriously, and use those to improve the future user experience of others who may take advantage of our webinars, and we do run webinars like this quite regularly. That concludes our event for today. I want to thank you all for attending and thank our speakers as well for the comprehensive coverage of our topic. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you again for attending. This concludes our event.